Hey everyone, this is Michael for Spirit Comics. Welcome to another review. This time it's of Inhumans vs. X-Men number 0. Yeah, this is more than a year old. This was after the Death of X miniseries, which ended in Cyclops getting killed. So I don't know why they have him on the cover with Black Bolt, but it's a pretty good cover, I think. It's a colorful cover, bright, and I like colors that are bright. I don't like dark and dank colors. And I could probably tell you some comic books that are a bit dark and in their color tone, but I won't, because this is about Inhumans versus X-Men. So not a space is wasted on this cover. That's good. That's very good, because when I saw this, it caught my attention. That's what a comic book is supposed to do. It's supposed to draw you in first by the artwork on the cover. Then, when you open it up, there's supposed to be a good story. Now, this takes after, like I said, the death of Cyclops. So, at this point, if you know anything about the Death of X story, then you know there is tension between the Inhumans and the X-Men. So they're now in a peace treaty. And the Inhumans aren't happy with the X-Men because they killed off one of the Terrigen clouds, which gives Inhumans their powers, their abilities. And so right now they're in a peace treaty. You know, and this starts off 8 months ago. This is New Attilan, or I keep wanting to say Atlantean, but that's wrong. This is New Attilan. I'm never gonna say that right. I'm pretty sure. That's where the Inhumans call their home base. That's Hank McCoy, aka the Beast, the old one, because as you all know right now, there's the younger team, and he's there at their home base, trying to find a cure for the Terrigen cloud, because the Terrigen cloud is killing off mutants left and right when any person with the X gene comes in contact with this Terrigen cloud. It's like a green mist, I think. But for Inhumans, it's good because it gives them powers, superpowers. And they become a whole new person, you know, their appearance changes and everything. And so, he's working with the Inhuman by the name of ISO. She's kind of cute, except for the, shaved off side of her head, I think. I don't know why anybody would want to shave off side of their head like that. But, that's just me. And I don't think ISO is a very happy person. At least, they don't portray her as being happy, because she says, "You seem so happy, Dr. McCoy." And he responds, "And why shouldn't I be happy, ISO? We have science to do." Apparently, science is something that he takes pleasure in, so he's happy to study science. And then over here we see the Ice Queen, Emma Frost, at Muir Island. She's at the grave of Cyborg, the the older one, who died in the Death of X miniseries. And she's reading the inscription off of his grave, "Ideas never die." And so she's looking down at this long drop, because she is going to dive off it. Why? Well, you'll see here in a moment. Now, back on the New Attilan base, Iso and Beast are talking. She says, "I just don't understand why you're smiling. Mutants are on the verge of extinction." And he says, "True, but at least this time the problem isn't related to some super villain or killer robots or an unstable witch or a time anomaly. It's just chemistry. It's science. Yeah, very difficult science." And then he says, "And through science, all things are possible." Now, I took issue with that. I remember the very first time I read this, because one of my beliefs is through God, all things are possible. But, that's me. And here they give us a different perspective of Iso. This time we're not looking at the side, which is shaved off. We're looking at how the hair flows over her side and helps shape her face, because that's what hair does. I know this may sound silly to some, but it does help shape the face. And at my age, because I'm now 44, my face may not be shaped all that well. But with women, they have a plethora of options. And right now, this is how Iso appears. And she says, "I don't want to contradict you, Dr. McCoy." And then he goes on and says, that she must always contradict him, because I think he's putting himself in the position of the teacher and she the student. And she's saying that the Terrigen, it's a chemical agent which is a catalyst for certain telomers in the Inhuman DNA. And when it's activated, it changes the traits of the Inhuman, their appearances, gives them powers, and so on. And Hank holds it and remarks, "Yes, quite miraculous for Inhumans. But of course, for mutants, it's dangerous because it can kill them. Because the mutants, they have something called an X gene. That's what makes them mutants. Or it can cause an mpox sickness." I'm not exactly sure what that is. I never learned what that was. And so we see somewhat of a sympathetic look from Iso. Mutants would no longer exist, because she recommends that perhaps we can excise the X gene through some sort of gene therapy. Remove the X gene from all the individuals which have it, so therefore the Terrigen Mist can't affect them. But then, if the X gene were removed, all mutants would cease to exist. Then back on Muir Island, Emma Frost is testing herself. She's timing herself. And she dives off of that cliff that we saw a moment ago. It doesn't go down to the ocean. That's just rocks. See? There she is up there, and she's going to dive all the way down here. Why? Because, well, she's going to tell us in a few minutes. But notice that her face goes from skin to Frost. Hence her name, Emma Frost. Back on the Atlantean, B says, "Nah, I don't think mutants are done for just yet." And Isa's confused about how he can be so relaxed. And she thinks, "Oh, I get it. You have a plan." And he says, "Nope, no idea what we're going to do. Honestly, seems like we're in a pretty big fix." She says, "So why?" "I already told you." I mean, I know some people take great pride in science, in researching and discovering new stuff, but when faced with something that's endangering your species, in this case, the mutant species, you know, you shouldn't be so happy and so carefree. I think that was a mistake here in the writing, but at the same time, it also goes to show that while the condition that the mutants find themselves in is very bad, that Hank McCoy is keeping the reflection of a person who decides not to let everything which is bad consume him. So he's not going to get lost in the bleakness of it all. And then he says that again, through science all things are possible, which I disagree with. I think through God all things are possible. And then he makes this analogy, which I think is very funny, but at the same time, it's true. He says, 30,000 years ago, our only method for creating a record of ourselves was to paint something on the wall of a cave. And that's, that's true. He says, but now, with little more than a thought, I can capture this moment forever. In fact, I can send it anywhere in the world. And he's taking a selfie with a cell phone while they're in the lab. I think that's funny. But he's using it to illustrate something. And he says to the caveman, what I just did would be impossible, the act of a god. Now it's the act of a child. The only difference is, science. And he's using something so simple to make a point. And I think it's both funny, but it works. Then back on Muir Island, it's curious how they keep switching back and forth between these two locations so quickly. Emma Frost gets up. She survived the fall because she turned her entire body into very hard ice, as you can see. I mean, she's no longer flesh and blood, she's ice and blood. And all of a sudden, a group of young girls, which I've never found their origin, I've never researched it, called the Stepford Cuckoos. Phoebe, Mindy, and Celeste, the Stepford Cuckoos, mutants, they appear out of nowhere. I mean, I don't know, were they on Muir Island? It's been a long time since I read The Death of X, so I don't know if they were on Muir Island or not. They say, Miss Frost, what are you doing? Well, one of them says anyway. And by this time, Emma Frost has changed back to human form. Then, I mean, like I said, this is kind of strange. New Atlantean, Muir Island, then New Attilan again. This is too fast a pace for the casual reader to keep track of what's going on. But then, anyway, ISO responds to his analogy, saying 30,000 years of science, Dr. McCoy, how much time do you think we have? She's trying to bring him down a little bit and trying to bring some reality into the situation that mutants are indeed in trouble. And he's like, well, I don't know, ISO. He shouldn't have used such a careless analogy since they're in such a serious situation. That's my opinion. And he says, this crisis killed my old friend, James Maddox, and it drove Cyclops mad. Well, he's just restating the history. And then he refers to the truce between the two groups, Inhumans and X-Men. Now, I know that a truce is not the same thing as peace. It means there's a ticking clock in the background all the time. But still, I am smiling, I am happy, I am confident. Do you know why? Because this is a problem we can attack with our minds. And my mind is exceptional. If he's anything if not humble. And then he makes a compliment. According to Queen Medusa, so is yours. And he points to ISO. And she remarks, well, that's nice of her to say. And see, I'm still very new to all of this, and I didn't have much time, didn't have much of an education before I came to New Attilan Butt. He says, oh, please, I hate modesty. It's inefficient. Now, as I said, and then we're back at Muir Island. I mean, at least what they could have done now that I'm reading this again for the third time. Now I've read it earlier this morning. This is the third time. They could have spent, say, 2, 3, or 4 pages at New Attilan, and then 3 or 4 pages on Muir Island to put all those stories together instead of breaking them up so much like this. But anyway, that was then. And Emma Frost goes on to explain to the Stepford Cuckoos, what a strange name, what she's doing, saying that she's working on changing into her diamond form, because she can change into ice, hard ice, diamond type ice, more quickly from leaping off a cliff. Provides quite the incentive. Of course it does. I'm using a timer, waiting a bit longer each time to trigger the change. And one of them says, but why, Miss Frost? That seems dangerous. Of course it is. Of course it's dangerous. That's the point. I need the pressure. It's the closest I can get to what it will be like to face Black Bolt again, because she is forming a plan. She is not content to wait to let the X-Men be offed by the Terrigen Mist. And one of them says, Black Bolt, why do you want to get anywhere near him? And she explains that it should be obvious because he killed Scott, Cyclops. And she says, don't believe the popular narrative. Revenge is actually quite satisfying and wonderful. But Miss Frost, he didn't kill Scott. It was the Mist, the Terrigen. And of course, these girls remember what happened during the Death of X miniseries. And this one says, Black Bolt didn't kill Cyclops. It was all a trick. Your trick. You remember what actually happened, don't you? And she says, why, of course. Don't be ridiculous. And then she says to the girls, you can see it right here, plain as day. And she pulls out what looks like an iPad or something. Like maybe she was there filming the entire event as it happened. I mean, seriously, I would think that she would be trying to do something more than filming the event. Of course, like I said, I have not read the Death of X miniseries in quite a while, so I can't remember. And she says, don't worry about me, ladies. I'm just fine. Well, that much I have to agree with. Emma Frost is one fine-looking lady. And they progressed the time 6 months ago. So it's, back at, and this is now in the South Pacific. And Beast is researching still the new the Terrigen Mist. He says that he designed something that should do some good with the help of the engineer on the New Atlantean. He's talking to Crystal. I mean, no, tell him. I don't want to keep someone saying Atlantean. It's not Atlantean. Of course, I remember when I saw this, I thought Atlantean. He says this device is based on their Cerebro technology, but that their people are assured him it will integrate with their ship's systems, without trouble. So Crystal says, thank you, Beast. We primarily use the RIV to track the Terrigen Cloud, knowing in advance if there are mutants in its path. It will help us to get them out of danger. Oh, that's so nice. This guy goes by the name Gorgon. Says, I'll go ahead and get it installed. The cloud's not too far from a populated island. And it says down here that the RIV is the Royal... the Royal Inhuman vessel. So, and Gorgon says, odds are pretty low these are humans or mutants living there, but better safe than sorry. And Crystal agrees. And so, then ISO gets reunited with someone named Flint. She's happy to see him again. And someone by the name of Grid. I mean, really, those names seem kind of cheesy to me. And she says it's been way too long. He says, you're welcome to take a tour with us anytime you want. Because, like she said, that she's the newbie. And they went all over the world. Not every continent's all that happy when the cloud rolls through. We've had some pretty crazy times trying to keep the peace. Oh yeah, he sounds like he's really making an effort. And ISO's saying, someday, maybe, but right now, I have to stay in telling I'm helping Dr. McCoy research the Terrigen problem. And then here's where you see the intentions come out. This one says, oh, maybe it's a problem for mutants. I'm not sure that is much of a problem for us. And he's right, because it's no problem for Inhumans, but for mutants it is, because it's lethal. And Grid, what a name, says, of course it is. We almost went to serious, straight-up war with mutants a few months ago, referring to the Death of X miniseries. And if this situation doesn't get fixed, it'll happen again. And he's right. So here's where they start to sort of even out the storyline, because now we're still on in the Inhuman mobile base, the Royal Inhuman Vessel, the RIV. It's all nice. It's all nicey nice right now, but if we don't find a cure for the Mpox soon, the mutants will try to destroy the last Terrigen Cloud. Mark my words. And that's what Emma Frost wants to do. I mean, she wants to make sure everyone is safe. Of course, she has her own goals, you see. And ISO is trying to keep a clear head. She's trying to be, middle of the road here. While she's an Inhuman, she's trying to work with Hank McCoy, who's a mutant. And she says, Dr. McCoy isn't like that. I've been working closely with him for months now. He wants to avoid violence at all costs. But these two believe violence is inevitable. And they say, well, maybe he does. But he's not the only mutant we have to think about. Emma Frost still out there. As far as we know, Magneto is too. And Ice Boy, I hate that guy. And Ice says, that's Iceman. I understand what you're saying, but we're doing everything we can. Henry McCoy is a genius. And she just gave him full props. That's a really good that's a wonderful remark to hear. He'll figure it out, she says. And of course, he's still researching the cloud, and he's finding it, and he finds out that it's shrinking. So that's good news for the mutants, but it still exists. So it's moving at an incredible pace. And then they get an alert that it's moving again. So Crystal gets all militant and says, all personnel scramble for emergency evac. Get the shuttle ready for launch. This is going to be tight. Because they have only just a very short time to get to the site and evacuate those mutants in the area. And she says, I'm sorry, Beast, we'll have to finish our conversation later. You can stay on, or you can, or if you have to get back. And he says, Crystal, you're about to save a mutant's life. I wouldn't miss that for the world. And so now, in Poland, we see Eric Lesson. I can't pronounce his last name. He's Magneto, the master of magnetism. He's a mutant. And he's drinking wine with Emma Frost. And she's asking him for a favor. And he says, perhaps. And she says, before I leave here, throw something at me with your powers very hard, very fast, without warning. And even he's surprised at this. That seems unwise. Why would I? And she puts on a baby smile, well, and just says, because I asked. Do it or don't. I don't care. I'm honestly more curious about this ridiculous place, Eric. What is this? And he tells her. And, the others, when they hear this, they should be alarmed, but they just stand there like statues. See, there's three of them. I think that's Psylocke right there, but I'm not sure. He says, this platform weighs 1,000 tons. 1,000 tons! That is a lot of weight. And I'm balancing it atop a spire a meter wide. Now, I'm not sure how far a meter is, but I'm going to guess that's not very wide at all. I'm more into pounds, miles, inches, that stuff is more comprehensible to me. He says, I like to remind my team of my capabilities from time to time. Not to mention you, Emma. She says, no angels on the head of this pin. And, of course, if anyone becomes annoying, you can tip the whole thing on its side and drop us a few hundred feet into the valley. He says, exactly. But he knows she's there for a reason. So he says, what do you want to talk about? She says, finishing the job, she says. He says, of course, Emma. Listen to me. I want the rest of the Terrigen removed from this planet as much as anyone. But there are certain realities we must face. And he says, the Inhumans were incredibly powerful to begin with, and more of them appear on the planet every day because of that damned cloud. The only reason we destroyed as much Terrigen as we did is because we took them by surprise. And even then we lost, well, you know who we lost. She says, yes, I do. What is your point? He says, my point is that if we attack again, they will be ready for us. And he's right. The remaining Terrigen cloud is all that exists in the world. It is the only way new Inhumans can access their power, and it's bound up in their traditions. It's sacred to them. That's why Medusa has her sister guarding the cloud in that ugly ship. They claim it's a humanitarian mission, but that thing's a battleship. They are protecting their Terrigen from us. And I have to say that I agree with him. I do. I really do. And he says Black Bolt alone can vaporize my people with a single word. Although, I don't know how, since Black Bolt never speaks. He's confusing to me. And he talks about Karnak. They can tap into their weaknesses. And he says he's just not sure how they could do anything. And she says, why, Eric, you sound afraid. Almost like she's taunting him. And then there's Sabretooth, who's holding a blade. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, it flies out of his hand right at Emma's head. And she immediately turns into her ice diamond form. And the blade shatters. I like that. And she says, thank you, Eric. Just what I was looking for. Very kind. Now listen, I have a plan that will give us everything we want. The second Terrigen Cloud will be destroyed. This planet will be made safe for mutant kind. Although, I have to say, her look with as the Ice Stone form, yeah, it's not too appealing. And she goes on to say how that she needs him and his power, and the monsters that his power, his immorality, and the monsters that call him their leader. I mean, it's like she insulted him while asking for his help. And I don't know how that can ever work. And she says, and you are that. And she says, these things must be done, dark things, and you're the darkest man I know. And so now it's 4 months ago, and we're in a new location, and it's the Savage Land, a place that I have not seen mentioned much in the X books, but I think probably back in the 1960s and 70s when I was not reading comic books because I was born in 1973. And it's ISO and B, she says, why do they call this place the Savage Land? And he explains that it's a self-contained biosphere that is part of the, I think, from the Cretaceous period. And everything that survived that period of time is in the Savage Land. He says many of the planets and animals here survived the KPG extinction event at the end of the Cretaceous. And she says, so you've got your, and he says, no, it's still him speaking. So you've got your dinosaurs and such, but also various evolutionary digressions from that time. It's a chance to see what the world might have been like had that asteroid, not hit. And he says he does the Spock. He does the Spock. He says it's fascinating, just fascinating. And she says, fascinating. Yep. Why are we here? And B says, well, you recall that when we visited Crystal on the RV, the Royal Inhuman vessel, we learned that the remaining Terrigen Cloud is, in fact, shrinking. It's dissipating. Just, I think, at a very slow rate. He says some Terrigen is surely being absorbed as new Inhumans are created. But the rate I saw was higher than expected. I suspect environmental dissipation is occurring. And you think that missing Terrigen is here? He says, I hope not. The Savage Land is pristine. There should be no Terrigen here at all. But if it does appear, this detector will send out a signal. I don't think it will happen, but better safe than sorry. And here comes a T-Rex. Right about to eat ISO. And then we switch to Detroit, where Emma Frost is meeting with the young mutants, the ones that were somehow taken from the past and drawn into the future. The young Bobby Drake, Iceman, the young Henry McCoy, Beast, and she says, You all live in this? How rustic. It's bigger on the inside. We do okay, Iceman says. What can we do for you, Emma? It's been quite a while. And she says she's been busy, doing grown-up things. And he says, honestly, we were worried about you. I mean, and Beast is like referring to Cyclops. And she says, oh? He's right behind me, isn't he? I love times like that. I remember seeing something like that in Justice League Unlimited when it was on TV. When Batman was talking. And he was talking about Wonder Woman, and there she was, right behind him. And there's young Cyclops, Scott Summers. He says, hey. He's another one of the time-displaced mutants. Then, they have that's some very brief dialogue, and it doesn't really do a lot of anything. Then we're back here at the Savage Land, where they're running from this dinosaur, and B says, hold it off! I need a moment to set the device. I says, hold it off! Yes, use your powers. Just don't kill it. It's an incredibly unique specimen. And then, I swear, I think this is almost ISO flirting with Beast, because she says, what about me? I'm also a unique specimen, Dr. McCoy. He says, you can do it. I believe in you. And that would be interesting to see if something came of a, romantic relationship between the two in the future, maybe between the Inhuman book and the X-Men books. And she said, and he puts the device in place, and he says, time to go. She says, you think? So they're doing this again, Detroit, Savage Land, back to Detroit. I mean, it's hard to say that this has pace, that this has good pacing, this particular issue. And Emma starts to get all choked up, or at least she pretends to. She says, Scott, Emma, what are you doing here? Wait, are you crying? And she says, don't be ridiculous. And all of a sudden she turns to her ice diamond form, and look what happens. Instead of tears, diamonds hit the ground. I'm done crying. And she explains to them that they're all going to die unless she gets help. That she needs them, the younger X-Men. Jean Grey, in particular, has a role to play in all of this. She wants to know if she can count on him. And Hank says, well, obviously, we need some specifics, but if things are really that dire, of course, we'll do what we... And she says, good enough for me, and starts to walk off. I'll be in touch. And then on this page, we get a split panel. First, we see Beast approaching Medusa, and then we see a scene of the Hellfire Club. It says 2 months ago. And it's back on New Attilan. Medusa, the Queen Inhuman. The woman who has the hair which can never be cut often enough. Beast acts sort of like a servant or knight or something, saying, "You invited me into your home 6 months ago, Medusa, as part of the truce between our people after the destruction of the first cloud and Cyclops' death. I have lived among you ever since, working with your scientists to try and find an answer to what seems like an unsolvable puzzle." "Yes," she says. Of course, she senses not everything is good. "Please tell me that was the preamble to you describing an ingenious solution." And of course he says, I wish that were so." He has to tell her that, of course, he hasn't found a solution. That he's been working with ISO to try and find a solution. And she says, "ISO told me what you like to say, Henry. All things are possible with science. Do you still believe that?" He says, "I do. Of course I do." And Medusa says, "I do too." And so, because Henry hasn't found a solution, she goes into her, I guess, war room or control room, and contacts all the other Inhumans, the main ones, Black Bolt and the rest of them, saying that the Beast hasn't found a solution, and she said that she'll continue to support him how she can. He's a good man, brilliant scientist, and such. But she tells them what they already know. A day will come when the mutants lose their patience with him, with us, and with this truce. Another attack will come. We will not start that fight, but we will win it. And you can see there, Beast does not like what he's hearing. And he's mad. And then back here, New York City, the Hellfire Club. Now, I don't know who Emma Frost is talking to, but she's talking to someone on the inside, and the Hellfire Club, to my knowledge, is an Inhuman project, I think. So she's trying to set up arrangements with someone to provide assistance to the mutants. That's basically why she's there. And she's doing it in a very seductive way. And I think she's talking to another woman, because Emma Frost is dressed in black, and that woman is dressed in green. So I'm not sure who it is. Might be Dazzler. I'm not sure. But whoever it is, they agree, because they clink their glasses together, and of course it's wine. Then yesterday, as it says, that is in the Savage Land, the device goes off. And this building starts to go up in flames. I don't think that's the Savage Land right there, but I could be wrong. And there's Beast studying. He says, "Oh no!" And this is what it says here. Might be a little bit blurry, but it says Savage Land Terrigen saturation rate. And it goes from low to extremely high. That's what he didn't want, is the Savage Land to be corrupted by the Terrigen mist. And Isa's concerned about him, so she asks if he's alright. And she notices that his the expression on his face is really strange. And he's choked up, saying, I just... And you can see what's going on through his mind. Apocalypse. The Sentinels. He's thinking of everything they've gone through in the past. And now that he's thinking more is about to come, more being more trouble. And he can't say anything to ISO. But I swear it looks like if it were a different situation that he might reach out to kiss her, or she might kiss him. I don't know, it was just an interesting situation between the two. He says, "It's nothing, ISO. Shall we get some lunch? I'm starving." He knows how to lie his way through a bad situation. And then here at the end we have Limbo X-Haven. School, Terrigen-free, mutant safe zone. Headed by Aurora Monroe, also known as Storm. Headmistress and a mutant. So, this is Ilyana Rasputin. I think I would say she's Russian. Also known as Magic. She says that Emma Frost is here. And Storm takes a call before she comes in. Emma Frost basically tells her the same thing she told Magneto, that there's going to come a time that, everything's going to go to pot. She says, "Hello, Oro. Who was that?" Like, she's checking up on everything, Who's with who? That's what she wants to know. It was Beast, the one at New Attilan. Oh, and what did that grouchy old kitty cat have to say? He wants to meet on Mirror Island. He says he has an update on his Terrigen research, but wouldn't give details. He wants everyone there, everyone. A representative from every major mutant group. Such drama, Emma says. Sometimes, don't you wish we'd just text about these things? Humor is not her strong suit, because Aurora sees through her. Why are you here, Emma? Mr. Beast has been very busy. He has been a very busy mutant over the last 8 months, diligently doing science things to save our people from the big bad Inhumans. Well, so have I, Storm, although I have my own approach to the problem. Less scientific, which is probably for the best. I'm not much good in a lab. And I love what she says here. This is, for a comic book that has been largely depressing, this was funny. She says, "I'd never have passed chemistry at all if it weren't for the magical power of short skirts." Oh, I love that. Emma says, "Tell me, how did Hank sound? Happy? Like someone with good news?" Storm says, "Well, no. Actually, the opposite." "Ah, I see. Well, don't worry, darling. Emma is here to save the day. To be continued in Inhumans vs. X-Men #1. And that was it for that review. It was the pacing was slow. It was really poorly written. It was. I won't say that it was poorly written. Just the flipping back and forth from location to location. As it was, one moment working with Beast on New Attilan, and the next Mirror Island, New Attilan, Mirror Island. I mean, back and forth like that, and not keeping it constant. not keeping it grouped together, I think it was bad. But you know, comic book is a year old, so nothing can be done about that. But anyway, it was a fairly good comic book, and the cover was beautiful. But the pacing was off because they kept switching from location to location so quickly. You know, they didn't stay in the same location very very long. And like I said, switching back and forth between locations, it's just a little bit confusing. Even now, a year later, reading it again, but I can still enjoy the story. And you need to have read the miniseries The Death of X to kind of grasp, the death of Cyclops and the Terrigen Mist, what that's all about. And I do have the miniseries, so maybe someday I'll get around to reviewing that as well. Well, I hope you liked this issue, and if you didn't, tell me. Let me know in the comments below if you liked it or if you didn't. And, please subscribe to Spirit Comics and smash that bell like She-Hulk. Like the video and share it if you enjoyed it, so others can enjoy it as well. I'm Michael for Spirit Comics. Till next time, true readers.